A second-in-command to General Norman Schwarzkopf in the Gulf, US Brigadier General Raymond Rowe is used to fighting tough battles, but recently his military experience has proved valuable training for the rough and tumble of the business world.
Businesses are looking for leaders, people who can set a vision, create organizations, motivate organizations. So that transition has been quite easy for me.
Raymond Rowe's new career still centres on organising people as the Asian Pacific CEO of employment recruitment company Adecco. The tale of his leap into an important role in an international company drew a captive audience at the Newcastle Business Club today. Business leaders fascinated at how he came to make the change.
I love the Army. I love my time in the service. When I retired, it was time to retire, and it was time to go do something else, and I decided to make a break.
Helen Kapalos, NBN News.
There was no point being in a hurry heading west out of Newcastle after 7:15 this morning. Traffic was backed up for more than 5 kilometres from Taro to Sandgate after a semi-trailer overturned. Police say the driver was travelling towards the Taro Railway Bridge on the New England Highway at about 85 kilometres an hour when the load of wooden trusses shifted. The trailer rolled, dragging the prime mover with it. Timber and building materials were spilled across the highway as the truck and trailer slid on their sides for 60 metres. The driver escaped with only minor injuries. The clean-up took 5 hours. A crane had to be brought in to shift the truck, requiring the closure of 2 lanes on the highway.
We always had lane open for the westbound traffic moving towards Maitland, and when the heavy crane was brought in, we had 1 lane open for the eastbound traffic heading into Newcastle.
The Roads and Traffic Authority said it didn't clear the area earlier because it wanted to keep peak hour traffic moving, albeit slowly.
It was more prudent to allow the peak morning flow to pass before we actually brought heavy machinery into play. When that heavy machinery came onto the road to start the recovery, they did.
The Hunters female athletes striving for Paralympic gold were put on a pedestal today. The chief executive of the Paralympic Games explaining at the region's Unifem breakfast in Newcastle why these women are an inspiration.
Against the odds, if you like, they are achieving wonderfully well.
Miss Appleby says the Paralympic movement is gaining momentum, but says athletes still need more support. Newcastle Paralympic swimmer Alicia Jenkins says it's disheartening playing second best behind the Olympic Games, but adds Newcastle businesses and schools have been supportive in her push for Paralympic gold, with many saying they'll make the trip to Sydney if she makes the team.
While it is hard with all the media focusing on the Olympics, it's kind of like there's a little secret there in October that hopefully people will be able to get the opportunity to find out about.
Evan Wilkes, NBN News.
Aboriginal areas certainly didn't go unnoticed in today's $2 billion health package, offering a $57.6 million cash injection to the Hunter alone over the next 3 years.
It will address problems, as you will notice by the figures, right from the Central Coast to the border.
The package will focus specifically on funding departments that deal with acute cases. Hunter Health today admitting it's a much-needed boost to areas such as elective surgery, cancer operations and emergency departments.
We are a fair bit behind, but this is a major step forward to improving where we stand within the state, and brings us up to the same level as many other of the urban areas across the state.
Capital Works projects targeted in Hunter Health's new model aren't included in today's funding, even though they will be considered in the May budget. But it does mean for now that those buildings will get an internal makeover.
Some of it will go to the Mater, some of it will go to John Hunter, some of it will go to our community health centres, some to Belmont and some to our rural sector. So it will go right across the area.
The Hunter Urban Division of GPs has also welcomed the move, which will shift the spotlight on community-based healthcare.
There's a massive move internationally of shifting services out where people are, that is out to the community, and anything that shifts them that way is a good thing. We'll be in discussion, and already have been in discussion with the Area Health Service about the best way to do that.
Specific details of the plan will be unveiled when Health Minister Craig Knowles visits the Hunter tomorrow. Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
Emergency radio frequencies overflowed with thousands of calls. No lives lost, but shortly before 7:30 this morning, 1,000 litres of diesel, petrol and oil spilled into a pine plantation 10 kilometres north of Karua when the driver of a semi-trailer swerved to avoid a kangaroo and rolled his truck. The semi was carrying two-stroke fuel in drums. The fire brigade is still working to contain the huge spill, a task made difficult in the rain. It says 50% of the spill has been recovered despite fuel flowing over recovery booms. Mopping up is continuing and the Pacific Highway is still reduced to just one lane. Throughout the Hunter region, major roads were flooded. South of Newcastle, Warners Bay High School car park was evacuated and a spate of accidents prompted this warning from police.
Put your lights on during the day so that you can be seen in this weather, and also to wipe at least 10 kilometres an hour off your speed limit.
While 230 millimetres of rain fell at Taree overnight, Clarence Town near Newcastle topped the count today with 98 millimetres. Moree continues to receive welcome rain in excess of 100 millimetres since Sunday, but the miserable windy conditions should improve.
And we've had the worst of it last night and today. Now we're heading towards mainly dry start to the weekend, but it's going to become unsettled again later in the weekend anyway, so a little bit of a respite, but not a lot.
When Belinda Perry gave birth to Serena at Christo Road Hospital in Newcastle more than 2 years ago, amniotic fluid entered her circulation system and she died from this rare condition which kills 80% of its victims. It was the coroner's task to decide whether any aspect of Christo Road Hospital's care contributed to Belinda's death. The coroner made special mention of Dr Vitakuru's evidence and accepted that not every hospital can have an intensive care unit and that no doctor in any hospital could have saved Belinda Perry's life. But he did say a number of protocols were not followed. Though the coroner said these did not cause Belinda's death, her father believes their family will never know. While Christo Road has no intensive care unit, it indicates its lack of emergency facilities with warning signs and promotes its level of care by telling patients you are assured of the highest standard possible in the community. The coroner recommended the health department ensure that private hospitals should spell out the limits of what they have to offer. Three years ago, the Polar Star's sister ship stopped in Newcastle, and the city's reputation has attracted the US Coast Guard once more. The Polar Star is fresh from an Antarctic mission.
So we just spent 2.5 months down in the Antarctic region. We were breaking in a channel to McMurdo Station so that supply ships could get through the fast ice that forms there every year.
The Polar Star carries 2 helicopters for search and rescue missions, as well as long-range Zodiac craft. While breaking through ice up to 8 metres thick is an exciting part of the US Coast Guard's charter, research support is another important role played by the Polar Star.
Once we leave Newcastle, we'll be headed up to Fiji to pick up some more scientists and be doing a science study of some underwater volcanoes in the Pacific Ocean off the Samoan Islands.
150 crew live in relatively cramped quarters, but there are a few creature comforts and facilities to keep them fighting fit. All the seamen have a go at the helm, but not while the Polar Star is breaking ice. Then the officer in charge is perched high above the bridge to control the angle of attack. The Polar Star will leave Newcastle on Tuesday.
New beginnings in more ways than one for Michael Guest. This week he'll farewell his new family and head to Portugal to compete in the World Rally Championship with a new team in Hyundai. 1999 was a year to forget about for Guest. 2000 is looking much better.
I think the biggest change for me this year is that I'm with a proper World Championship team. The team that I was with last year really struggled. to present the right sort of machinery for me for each event, and that certainly didn't help. So everything's moved in the right direction for me this year.
Guests' first race will be in Portugal on dirt tracks in front of an estimated 3 million crazed motorsport fans. It's then on to Spain and sealed roads. Guest will race in 2 divisions, Formula 2 cars and World Rally cars. Although there are no titles in his sights this year, season 2000 is the start of a 3-year campaign for world domination.
So this year is just a real learning year for me in the World Championship, and then next year we'll get into the competition full on.
Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Without their own away strip, Melbourne borrowed Newcastle's. But that wasn't all they adopted from the home side, pinching a game plan in the process. The visitors happy to sit back and repel the Breakers' attack that threatened but never penetrated. Just centimetres in it, but 0-0 was how it stayed. Andy Roberts also unable to break the deadlock just before the break. While the scorers weren't busy, the referee was, with 2 bookings and more to come. Mark Silic made it 3 bookings for the visitors before Martin John kept his side out of trouble after a Glenn Sprod strike. Striker Andy Harper has a habit of causing headaches in attack, but the Knights keeper found that out the hard way. The Knights themselves rarely got into attacking situations, but when they did, they made it count. The ball catching Mark Wilson's head and then the net as the Knights went up 1-0. The home side was getting desperate and frustrated. Veteran Andy Harper lashing out, and it cost him a red card ending his night. He now faces at least a 1-week suspension. Shane Price also left seeing yellow, finishing a frustrating night for Newcastle.
A desperate battle to save a baby false killawah was waged at Terrigal Beach today after the 1.5 metre mammal beached itself.
It's in reasonable condition. Obviously it's stranded, so there's something wrong with it.
Rescuers moved the whale overland to calmer waters in Terrigal Haven, where a vet pronounced it well enough to be released.
We subsequently released it. It swam around quite well and unfortunately headed back into Terrigal here where we are now.
And as the hours dragged on, concerned crowds gathered to watch. But the frustration was far from over for rescuers, the mammal making a mad dash to beach itself yet again. Rescue crews remain hopeful the baby whale will survive its ordeal. Not put off by all the false starts, National Parks and Wildlife, together with local lifesavers, have come up with a novel approach to get the whale back into deeper waters.
Join the 2 IRBs together and putting a lifesaver in the middle in the tarp pretending to be a whale and taking it out through the waves out to an area and seeing if they can actually release the surf lifesaver representing the whale. And if that's a safe operation, then we'll try and do that later in the day.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Ben and Jamie Crampton have numerous Australian amateur titles to their credit and are both undefeated since going professional. Younger sibling Ben continued his winning form last night against New Zealand champion Sam Akuso, the 22-year-old needing less than 3 rounds to be declared the winner. Disappointment for older brother Jamie, whose fight was called off in the opening round after a nasty head clash. But both may head to the US soon, backed by Costa Hughes promoter Vlad Horton. From boxing to boats, and Raymond Terrace's Steve Brown took the honours at the Karua Powerboat Spectacular today, winning his class in Cut Loose. But tomorrow is the feature day with the Karua Gold Cup and points in the State Series up for grabs. Skydiving looks as easy as falling off a log, but at Cessnock, the national style and accuracy champs, it's much harder than that. Precision is what counts on ground, while in the air it's all about style. The championships continue until Monday.
When Dave Stewart hailed a cab home from a Newcastle nightclub in the early hours of this morning, he expected to be delivered safely to his Katara South home. Instead, he claims an argument with a female taxi driver over the fare attracted 5 more taxis to the scene and instigated a violent bashing.
I was on the ground, I couldn't move. They had me and then they just kept smashing me head and I went out unconscious.
Mr. Stewart's 2 teenage sons say they also witnessed the attack. They claim they looked on as one taxi driver tied a belt around their father's legs while he was bashed repeatedly by another with a steel torch.
I've seen about 5 or 6 taxi drivers pinning Dad down, so I went out there and I'd seen all the blood all over him and all over the ground and whatnot, and I just seen him hitting him in the head with the torch. And I said, just stop hitting him.
Inquiries to Newcastle taxis proved unsuccessful today, a spokesperson claiming officials were unavailable for comment. Police are now investigating the matter.
I'd like to see all the taxi drivers really severely reprimanded for what they did. It's not right.
Helen Kapalos, NBN News. The alarm was raised shortly after 7 this morning when residents of this Helena Street property at Ellalong awoke to find a blaze inside their home.
People only moved in Friday and they were doing a bit of cleaning up, went to bed at 5 a.m, left the dryer on.
That proved a dangerous move, lint from the dryer igniting after it was left on for several hours. It took the fire crew from nearby Paxton just under 10 minutes to contain the fire, but it's believed smoke and water damage took hold and it's now likely the rented property will have to be demolished.
It's gone from the laundry up the wall into the roof space and it's totaled all the rafters in the roof. The roof was collapsing, so we had to fight through the roof and also from inside the building.
No one was injured in the blaze. Helen Kapalos, NBN News.
It's difficult enough terrain normally, but after the rain of the last week, the Williams River is a roaring torrent. And this was the attraction that led to the party of 5 from the Newcastle area attempting to canyon down the river when they shouldn't have.
To go in these conditions is absolutely ridiculous. There is no doubt that it is a magnificent walk. It is a pure wilderness and magnificent countryside as you go through, but you are committed to the watercourse.
Mid-Saturday afternoon, 36-year-old Gil Gordon of Tanambit broke his ankle, and while 29-year-old Mount Hutton nurse Eleanor Smith rendered first aid, their 3 companions trudged throughout the night to alert authorities. A rescue crew tried to locate them yesterday, but they were thwarted by failing light, so a massive operation was mounted today with a search headquarters established north of the Barrington Guest House.
There are police here, there are state emergency services, the ambulance are here of course, National Parks and Wildlife, and we're being assisted by some guides who work at Barrington House.
This afternoon, the missing pair were located by one of 2 ground search parties. And while the patient's condition was being stabilised, the Westpac rescue helicopter took advantage of a brief break in the weather to winch them out and deliver the patient to a waiting ambulance. Late this afternoon, Mr Gordon was taken to the Maitland Hospital, where he is reported to be in a satisfactory condition.
It's been just over 2 weeks since the last serious accident on the busy Pacific Highway intersection. Witnesses were horrified by today's collision.
It is nasty. I've been in the fire brigade for 7 years and this is about one of the worst I've seen.
The Corolla travelling along Glebe Road collided heavily with the semi and was T-boned by the rig. Rescue crews worked frantically to free the 88-year-old woman and her 61-year-old daughter who was driving the car. Both women were trapped in the twisted wreckage. The 88-year-old woman was taken to John Hunter Hospital where she later died. Her daughter suffered minor injuries. The truck driver from Raymond Terrace wasn't injured. Evan Wilkes, NBN News.
A 2.5 metre waterfall ended Gil Gordon's adventure on the Williams River. He was sliding down it when his ankle broke.
There was a rock waiting for my foot at the bottom, so it struck the rock, got caught for a fraction of a second, but that was enough to break it. I felt it crack and then pulled it away and went swirling down the river.
Mr Gordon spent the next 48 hours in the bush. 3 from his group kept going to get help, while 1 stayed with the injured man. The pair had plenty of food, while ponchos and thermal blankets kept them warm, but they couldn't be spotted from the air. The thick canopy of trees provide few gaps, and the ground search of the Williams Valley was slow going.
Particularly after, 8 inches of rain since Sunday, we're in a situation where the river being quite swollen, anyone in there is slipping, sliding and potential to do damage.
With his wife Angela at his bedside, Gill agrees he should never have embarked on the trip.
The river was high, it was a mistake to be there. And the consequences of our actions were pretty obvious, especially when you're sitting on a cold and wet rock for 48 hours with nothing to do.
The experienced bushwalker has nothing but praise for the efforts of emergency services to bring him home.
They took a big risk, and I would like to thank them and their families for, actions above and beyond the call, I guess.
David McElwain, NBN News. Seal Rocks is one of the best spots on the north coast for surfing and diving. Many people have been returning to the tiny hamlet for their holidays for 20 years, and they almost certainly would have bought a burger from BJ's Caravan run by Bernie King.
I've been working here with my family for 15 years, and I've taken pride in the food that I've served from this van, and I think that my cleanliness is not even to be challenged.
Great Lakes Council has received a report saying the caravan no longer complies with health regulations, and the Mayor says the council has no alternative but to close BJ's.
It's no good as saying, look, it's been there for so long, it's an icon of the area, it's a notable feature. All those things are all very nice, but if it doesn't comply with the law, it doesn't save anybody the responsibilities they've got to adhere to.
Bernie King is also the president of the Save Seal Rocks group, which has opposed the commercialisation of the idyllic holiday village.
It's just not natural justice what they're doing to me. As I said, I'm a thorn in their side, and I feel they're out to get me.
Council has got no interest in the actions of any one particular individuals. They've got only concern for the law of the day, and the law of the day is affecting this operation.